Punchbowl News, some new reporting on Senate Democrats pressuring their Republican colleagues to challenge President Trump on his appointment of Bill Pulte as acting director of national intelligence. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, who is the Intelligence Committee vice chair, asked Majority Leader John Thune to use his influence with the White House to reverse Trump's decision on Pulte. That's according to several sources familiar with the matter. Warner made clear to Thune all options are on the table, including blocking the authorization of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That law allows the federal government to spy on foreign targets outside the United States without a warrant. Some lawmakers oppose the law over privacy concerns for U.S. citizens whose communications are collected in the surveillance process. Let's bring in senior congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, Andrew Desiderio. Andrew, good morning to you. We can dive into this FISA question a little bit more, but let's talk more broadly first about the appointment here of Bill Pulte, a guy who, as we detailed yesterday, has no previous experience in intelligence, works in real estate. His qualification is that he is extraordinarily loyal to President Trump and is willing and has already gone after perceived opponents and enemies of this president.
Well, not only all of that, but 11 days earlier, Trump had said that the acting DNI would be Aaron Lucas, the guy who is currently the principal deputy, Senate confirmed, director of national intelligence, a pretty normal national security-minded Republican, and someone who Senate Republicans were totally okay with in this role. And what I report as well is that the White House actually told Senate Republicans that Aaron Lucas would be in the job as acting DNI on a long-term basis. And then, of course, 11 days later, not only does the president announce that it's going to be someone else, he announces that it's going to be Bill Pulte, of all people, who, as you mentioned, has no background in national security. And actually, when they stood up the office of the Director of National Intelligence, which was obviously in the post-9/11 era, they included a requirement in there that the director of that office be someone who has some sort of background or qualifications in the intelligence world, national security in general, the military. Bill Pulte has none of that, but he's able to serve as acting DNI because under the Federal Vacancies Act, he is already a Senate-confirmed official because of the fact that he is the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. So the way the law works currently, it allows Bill Pulte to serve in this role, but he is technically evading that statutory requirement in terms of qualifications.
And we've heard now outward public contempt from Republicans even yesterday about Bill Pulte. In one hearing, Senator Thom Tillis, the outgoing Republican of North Carolina, was talking to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, had him recount a story where Scott Bessent reportedly at a dinner party in Georgetown offered Bill Pulte to step outside so he could beat him up. And Thom Tillis sort of affirmed that that might have been a good idea in their conversation back and forth. So let's talk about these leverage points you report on this morning. You've got Senator Warner talking to Majority Leader John Thune about this one point that they might be able to use to block Pulte's nomination. Are they hopeful that they have a chance of convincing President Trump, or at least enough Senate Republicans, to push back on this?
Look, it's going to be tough. Senate Republicans, of course, privately agree with much of what Democrats are saying about Bill Pulte, but the significance of Senator Warner being the one who went to Majority Leader Thune and said this is the fact that Senator Warner has been critical for whipping Democratic votes for a reauthorization of FISA. Of course, in the Senate, you need 60 votes for anything, and on top of that, there aren't 51 Republicans who support a reauthorization of FISA. So they were going to need probably around 15 Democrats anyway, and Mark Warner has long been a supporter of Section 702, even as this party has sort of drifted away from it when it comes to privacy and civil liberties concerns. So the fact that it was him doing it, he has the credibility with Republicans on this issue in particular, and he has a good relationship with John Thune, I'll add. And the fact that he asked him to use his influence with the White House to get Bill Pulte, of course, sort of out of the job is notable. And I'll also note that John Thune doesn't have as much influence right now with the president than he did even a few weeks ago, because obviously all these tensions between Senate Republicans and the White House over, Ken Paxton versus John Cornyn, of course, the Texas Senate race, as well as this anti-weaponization fund, which has now delayed the reconciliation bill funding ICE and Border Patrol for 2 weeks, which they're going to try to pass that bill today, but we will see what happens.
Yeah, of course, President Trump values loyalty. See Bill Pulte over his relationship with the Senate Republicans. Punchbowl's Andrew Desiderio, great reporting this morning. Thanks for bringing it to us, Andrew.